All right. So, again, connected to YouTube live now. And here we go. So, welcome everyone. This is the second interview with Mohamed Kamara. And he is, well, if you've seen his first interview, you know he's done quite a few things. For those of you who don't know, he's done a lot of things. A couple of things that stand out is he's from Sierra Leone, attended the Ohio State University, which he very kindly reminded me you have to say the Ohio State University, which you guys played well in the football championship, so you deserve that one. Although to be clear, for Americans, we are talking about American football. Usually, Mohammed would be referring to the other football, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But welcome, Mohammed. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Scott. Scott, it's been an interesting 2020, and then now an interesting 2021, right? So I'm
Yeah,
looking
I was like,
forward.
what?
So 6 days in, last Wednesday, what happened, right? Hopefully we'll get to dive into some of those conversations too. But I'm looking forward to our dialogue.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about how 2020 went for you. First of all, you are the founder, not just founder. You're an entrepreneur, and like you said, you want to emphasize you're a Black founder, and your company is called NF Cares. Since that's a lot of med tech stuff, 2020 was a really, really interesting year for you in many ways because on one hand, as a founder, saying here's a company and here's circumstances that here's opportunities for you to grow, but also as a Black founder, say here is a massive problem that is being compounded by the pandemic. So
Hmm.
how did kind of a higher level, how did 2020 go for your company?
So 2020 sped up the use of medtech and telehealth, right? Telehealth and wellness. It really did. Hospitals executives, we've got insurance executives. They were slow to move in this space because
Yeah.
everybody was trying to figure out reimbursement. Oh, we don't want to move in this space, but once the pandemic hit, it's like, okay, we all have to go online because
Right.
then there were less interaction with inpatient visit, right? People had COVID, and then they didn't want to compromise patients, and
Yeah.
physicians didn't want to compromise themselves as well because they have family. So literally everyone was forced to go online,
Yeah.
which is an interesting time to be in this space, right? It is an interesting time to be in this space that you are connecting doctors to patients,
Yeah.
and then it's interesting that that intersection. Well, the only unfortunate thing, though, as in the Black community, unfortunately,
Mhm.
people that are affected by the pandemic, it kind of increases that disparity, right, that occurs
Yeah.
in communities of color. There tends to be there are under resourced, right? That is in healthcare, that is in tech, that is in food insecurity. There we tend to be super under resourced. So when the pandemic hit, it increases that, and a
Yeah.
lot of those healthcare workers that are on the front line, they're Black individuals.
Yeah.
We have our mothers that are Black that are in the front line supporting, making sure that we have a good handle on this pandemic, right? They are your healthcare workers. And unfortunately, some of them died in the process of that. So you see that this pandemic, and then individuals that are minorities like ourselves that may be disposed to having more than one chronic disease, right?
Yeah.
They have modern conditions that even increases the likelihood. Now they're at home, they have this sedentary lifestyle, they're sitting home. One is a mental health issue. Secondly, it's like their obesity issue as well as the increase because they're just eating, right? Because there's no
Yeah.
movements they're doing. They're not out there
Yeah.
moving. They're getting sunlight, and as a result, they're depressed. So it's all this too that the pandemic actually increases. Unfortunately, it was good for med tech, but it was terrible for individuals as well because they're just sitting at home, depressed and trying to figure out what next they should be doing. And
Yeah.
now, thankfully, there is a vaccine, but we don't know what the efficacy of the vaccine is yet because it's pretty new, right? Um, but as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, It's been an interesting year for me. I had a chance to. I was in DC, but I've moved now. I live now in Atlanta, which is about six. I've been here for, I guess, almost 7 weeks. And I support Black founders through an organization called RCIE. I
Yeah.
work as an operation manager plus my own organization. So we support everything Black, right? Literally Black founders that are in. Some of those Black founders have product in Walmart, Target, and those big box offices. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things to me is beyond all that, you also have a podcast where I know a lot of the emphasis has been on mental health, but you also dig into stuff like, all right, for you being a founder or for someone else being a founder, some of these societal issues that go on, and like you mentioned just now, for the Black community, there were already massive problems in terms of getting the healthcare needed. I don't remember the stats, but I do remember reading there was a study that said Black pregnant women, I think it was something like they're 4 times higher at risk for dying during childbirth. Um, and
Absolutely.
I think it has something to do with the unfortunate reality is sometimes it has to do with uh, when Black women, for example, on a scale of 1 to 10, if they say my pain is at an 8, it tends to be downplayed, whereas women of other, well, I don't know if it's women of other races, but or if it was just white women, but at least Black women, if they say 8, it gets downplayed. Where the control group, or I don't know what the exact group is, but compared to other races, an 8 would be treated as an 8.
Yeah.
And we already know it's very imprecise because, for example, if I have high pain tolerance, I might say this happened and oh, the pain is a 5 when the average person with the same injury would say, oh, that's a 10. So there's already a little bit of how do you report accurately because, you know, yeah, maybe it hurts, but because you're raised to tough it out, maybe you're raised on a farm or just kind of, I have no context. So I guess it's this hard, it hurts this much because I'm not dying of cancer. I haven't been shot. So how dare I say it's more than a 5,
Yeah.
And
And
like you said,
and
you
and,
know,
and,
that
and those
happens.
those disparities, they're so
Yeah.
real, man. I was affected by my sister passed during childbearing due to critical measure. We have moms that are physicians last year. One particularly in Indiana. She's a pediatrician, and during pregnancy, she was rushed to the hospital, and she
Mm.
passed as well. She passed due to critical measure.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case. We had a doctor that was that's a physician that got affected by by COVID, and she was asking for an extra dosage of COVID so that for a dosage of medication, but the hospital in Indiana workers, they refused to give it to her, and she
Mm.
passed. Right, she had COVID, but this is a physician that's on the front line asking for simple medication. Imagine that. To address your thought too around disparity that happens for women, minority women to be exact, is the fact that pain tolerance, we need to normalize that African American women, Black women, and as well as other minority group, Latinx women, they feel pain, and they should be treated once they complain of that pain, or they they should be cared for deeply. One of the issues, if a woman that is minority, a Black woman, is paired with a physician that is Black, their likelihood of being saved and not dying of preeclampsia increases, because that minority physician understands and look for things that oftentimes that impact that Black woman, right? So
Yeah.
there's that disparity, is that racial. There is definitely racism in healthcare. It's true. It exists. It's caused a lot of pain for the minority community, and it's a real thing. Even now, this vaccine,
Yeah.
you see a lot of physicians and a lot members in our community are pushing against that vaccine for rightful reasons, right? Because of the back in the days in
The
Alabama, the
70s, I think, right?
studies, right? The studies that happened,
Oh, that,
so
yeah.
so this healthcare is a big systematic racial thing, racial issue and racial problem for our community.
Yeah, yeah, and I've actually talked to a couple college students, and one of them said she wants to get the vaccine, but her mom doesn't want to get it. And she was saying, thankfully my mom's not preventing me, but I am kind of concerned because my mom and my grandmother don't want to get the vaccine. And I referenced the same thing. I said, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about because they're young enough, or sorry, they're old enough to remember what the government did and being forced into, supposedly you're being vaccinated, but then you're sterilized and all these things. And yeah, we've since uncovered that. I don't know the full story, but part of it is for me and you, our generation, the current college students, it's easier to say, okay, yeah, we'll trust the government a little bit more. But for the older generations, yeah, they grew up when the government, well, before desegregation in the 60s and all that, they grew up when the government was still kind of just, oh, yeah, Jim Crow laws, whatever, as opposed to, all right, we're going to strike it down, we're going to change for the better. And I think we should also touch on something. You mentioned for minority women, I figure there's probably still a difference, even if, let's say if you're a doctor and a black woman walks in, if I'm a doctor and a black woman walks in, statistically, from what I understand, there's still going to be a problem with me treating her because, even though I'm not white, obviously, there's still the fact that even if I'm doing my best, I simply will not understand for someone with her genetics because I might say to someone with my genetics, oh, okay, oh, here's something that commonly happens to Asians. For example, a lot of Asian babies are born, we're at a higher risk for jaundice.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that for Jewish people, Tay-Sachs disease, I won't understand that. Someone comes to me and says, oh, Tay-Sachs disease, oh, you'll be fine, but they don't want to, they don't want to hear me say that. I want to hear a Jewish doctor say that. So um I'm guessing there's still issues there where if a black woman comes to me, I might not fully understand what she says. I understand the English definitions, but I might not fully understand what she's conveying. But then you would say, yeah, I understand. My mom went through that. My sister went through that. Or yes, the past 14 patients I've seen have said the same thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait, I think I'm just starting to realize there's another meaning. So how big of an issue is that between, other minorities trying to understand African American patients?
Yeah, it's part of reliability, right? So if a provider a black woman goes in to get care, and the black physician is there and they're relatable, they relate
Mhm.
to that woman, they tend to give the woman the best care that they need, and they
Yeah,
tend to listen more deeply to the woman as opposed to being very dismissive, right? Denying delay.
yeah,
Non-delay is a big thing that happens in healthcare, where hey, you only have this pain. We're gonna downplay the pain, go home, and we're gonna send you with probably some painkiller.
yeah,
No, look at the blood test of that woman. Really dig deep, dig deep into those blood tests, right? Because then you
yeah,
start finding the thing that she might have hypertension,
yeah.
exposed to more sodium, which will lead to preeclampsia, right? A blood clot.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
So those conditions, you need to dig deep into those blood tests as opposed to being very denying, delay, and dismissal of the woman. Go home, it's nothing. And by the time you discover there's something, it's too late and she's gone.
yeah,
That's the problem, right? You have to be very culturally sensitive and be willing to say, if I was in her shoes, regardless of being a minority person, how will I treat that patient? So if you're a
yeah,
black woman, black physician, ask the same question. If you're a minority, if you're a white physician, you put yourself in the patient's shoes.
yeah,
This could be my sister, this could be my mother, this could be my aunt. Will I be able to give them the best care to make sure that their life is saved and the baby's life is saved as well? So it's
yeah,
really a common ground of they're human as well, regardless of their color.
yeah,
And it's a perfect way to look at even And I think that's all. That's part of what MLK stands for, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Come
And
on, come around.
rest in peace. Remembering him this weekend, especially tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I think, in case someone doesn't fully understand what we're talking about, we're not saying if you're a black woman, only go to a black doctor. What we're saying is kind of it. This is a little different, but for example, if we're playing basketball, right? If someone hits me, I'm 5'11, I'm a shooting guard. If someone hits me and a ref calls a foul on that person, and then Shaq being so much bigger, taller, stronger, the same person hits him in the same way and they don't call a foul. We're not saying we need to get 7 foot giants to be a ref for Shaq. We're saying, refs, please recognize that when Scotty gets hit, however much it hurts him, it hurts Shaq the same. Just because he's bigger and doesn't move as much doesn't mean it doesn't hurt him. It's just that Scotty, being a much smaller, lighter player, gets knocked sideways, where Shaq still has the same bruise, but instead he's not getting that foul call. So where other players stop fouling me because they're getting fouls called, with Shaq, they keep fouling him. He keeps getting more and more bruises because no one is calling those fouls. So everyone gets away with just smacking him over and over.
Exactly.
And
It's like
it,
removing the layers. Remove your layers and open your lanes into culturally being culturally competent,
yeah,
regardless if you're black or white. It's not like, okay, go to a black physician. Even the black physician needs to be culturally competent as well, because there's even in the black community, there's Africans and there's people from different countries. They have a unique skill sets, right? And unique problems, unique
yeah,
conditions, unique eating pattern. It's literally being culturally competent and as well as culturally sensitive to others' differences, and then be willing to dig into those details to treat that person with the most equitable, best care that you can deliver.
yeah, yeah. And thank you for telling us all of that. I do want to shift gears a bit, because we mentioned, you were in DC, Atlanta, and it's kind of the that we just now talked about kind of what happened in 2020, and you recently moved to Atlanta in at the end of 2020, and things that have gone this year already. It's only been 17 days, although we're both thinking about something that happened, within the first 2 weeks. So, for you, having lived in DC for a long time, but then also for you coming from Sierra Leone, you do have a somewhat different perspective from, for example, for me being born and raised in the US, you definitely have a little bit of a different perspective coming from a different country, but then also being in DC and possibly knowing people who are affected directly, where I just kind of hear about it. What are some of your thoughts on all this stuff?
It's, 2020 was a rude awakening. 2021 has started to be more of a rude awakening. First of all, it has to get better, right?
Yeah.
The way it began, it has to get better from here. Now, all year in 2020, part of myself and others who were out there, friends of mine, were out there protesting for
Mhm.
human decency, right? Treat us the
Yeah.
same way and give us the same privilege as our white counterparts. It's not saying treat us better than our white counterparts, just equal playing field, right?
Yeah.
Equal playing field, in the way that we are treated in terms of um, legal laws and just equitable rights.
Yeah.
So most of my friends were hit, like we had women that were hit during that protest, and they had bruises.
Mhm.
They were peacefully protesting, not breaking things, not shouting at police, peacefully protesting. Some of them with their kids, some of them by themselves, right?
Yeah.
Some of them, and the reaction from the government was send out cops, send out military personnel to push protesters away.
Yeah.
This is folks that are in minority. That's the way they were treated. And this is a common thing. Now, when the other race in 2021, our white counterparts and brothers decided to protest the election results. They went in there, and none of them were tear gassed, right? None of them were beaten. Most of them, a lot of them have not been arrested.
Yeah.
That was the other community. There were being bloodshed. If there were black community that did this, Washington, the White House protesting results, election results, there were fear, right?
Yeah.
They would have been dead. If you were black, you would have been dead. Guaranteed. You would have been shot at dead. But that was not the case.
Yeah.
And we have now folks that are some of them that have been taken into custody, right? Complaining that, hey, there was a gentleman complaining that, hey, I need they he doesn't want to be in prison because or he's not doesn't want to be in jail, and because he eats consume healthy food. I forgot what's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah, he wanted organic food.
Organic food. Like, dude, if you wanted organic food, you probably shouldn't have gone and caused what you did. And so this is literally a slap in the face. Like, if minority people had done that, they would have been dead. Bloodshed, shot out, dead. But now the privilege comes in. We had, and then as well, there was a minority cop that saved, kind of, that was the hero of the day.
Yeah, Eugene Goodman. I think Sergeant Eugene Goodman was
Yeah.
his rank.
So
Yeah.
he put himself at risk so that our white counterparts that are in Senate will be saved, right? And this is the unfortunate part of, we just want equal playing field. The White House was built by blacks, right? Now it's destroyed by white counterparts that think that they own this country. It's their
Yeah.
country. The laws favor them, so that's why they think that they own this country. And then the unfortunate reality is, they walked into the White House with that macho and said, like, yes, we own this country. As a result, um, they've been validated that they do. If the US do not have I'm glad that at least one thing that the United States has done is the impeachment of Trump, which sort of, the reason why they impeached him was so that he doesn't have to run a second term, right? We know that that's why. The consequences of these individuals, some of these individuals that were part of that last Wednesday chaos, they need to be reprimanded, right? They need to be held accountable. Because if
Yeah.
they're not held accountable, what would happen? So similar to what happened in Germany, right?
Yeah.
Hitler, the arranged coup that happened in Germany, they gave him a slap on the wrist. 10 years after what happened, Hitler turned out to be history, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Became the
killing.
chancellor and
Exactly.
absorb more
So
and more power.
if we don't do the same here and really hold individuals accountable, it's gonna give another person comfort that, let's go do this coup thing again, and then Hitler number two happens again. Unfortunately,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I think.
credit.
Yeah, I think one of the really crazy things to me is, being Asian American, being Chinese American, for me, when we talk about race issues in the U.S., it's usually whites and blacks in some way. And so for me, um, something where, for example, when the insurrectionists, insurgents, whatever you want to call them, broke into the Capitol, my first thought, I didn't know, all I heard was people broke in. I was thinking, I feel like I would have been shot right there. I'm not even black, now obviously for blacks, we're very aware, and for me growing up in the South, attending school in the South, we're very aware of a lot of stuff that the civil rights movement has gone through. But then even before that, during the collapse of the Reconstruction, how quickly things turned. And um, when the news first broke about someone being killed, at first it was, well, okay, I guess I'm not surprised. But then I saw these pictures, people in the Senate chambers and all that, and then finding out, oh, this person was killed because they were trying to break through the last door where apparently Vice President Pence was, Speaker Pelosi, and all those people. And, and then you see the video come out and you realize that's why they died, because they finally were breaking through the last door, as opposed to, oh, we just don't want you to gather. And
Yeah.
in contrast, we also have Officer Brian Sicknick, which I believe his rank was officer. I always get these ranks confused, but people could say, oh, the woman who was shot down, she was just protesting this and that. She believes in Trump. So does this officer. Yes, but the difference is he upheld his oath to the Constitution, and he was killed by the same rioters and insurrectionists because they didn't think he was on their side. And that's the thing. He's on the side of the Constitution. And, there's also Officer Daniel Hodges, who is being crushed by the protesters. We've seen videos of him, his squad, his platoon trying to pull him back into safety. So, there's a lot of people who, they're in law enforcement, they're in the military, they want to serve honorably. And these protests being compared to these riots, we're seeing great examples of how the message gets twisted, but then also, like you said, level playing field.
Yeah.
I can expect, if I get pulled over, which I have been pulled over for speeding a few times, I can expect to simply get a ticket and that's it. But unfortunately, we often hear stories about Black men and women who fear for their lives, simply being pulled over. And I remember in high school, some of my classmates, they would just go to the judge and say, oh, sorry, I didn't know I could do that. And they would just be told, do volunteer service. I never, I knew I couldn't do that because it was just, I have to pay a fine. I can't just do community service. And I'm a high school student. I don't have much money, but, I had classmates who could get out of paying any money, where I knew I wouldn't be able to do that. But then as I get older, finding out, well, if I were Black, then it wouldn't even be, can I just pay my fine and leave? It's, can I survive this and then just pay my fine and leave?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and Scotty, to literally, let's be clear of the act, right? It was an act of terrorism.
Yeah.
In constitutional law, it's an act of terrorism. So they're not calling insurgents, they're terrorists. It was an attempted act of terrorism. They're terrorists. People that were engaged in this. It wasn't just rioters. Peaceful rioting, you can call them rioters, but this is the terrorists. It's domestic terrorism. That's what happened. The domestic act of terrorism. That's what happened on Wednesday. It's just, let's call it what it is. In terms of defining what happened in the Constitution, it's an act of terrorism, and they're terrorists. Secondly, the reaction from law enforcement that were there, we've seen a lot of videos where some of the Blue Lives Matter law enforcement were taking videos of these protesters, so they know they knew. It seems as though they were all in this, right? They knew. And you would never see any of this happen in a peaceful protesting where that law enforcement officer that is white was taking a picture of a with a black protester. That doesn't happen. But here it's like an act of terrorism, and you celebrate with that person that's committing an act of terrorism. And so there's that disparities. It's just kind of enlightened the disparities even further. That and then of course us being in Georgia, we know that it's coming to us soon, right?
Well, in fact, your state was the last one to elect your because of your system. You had to do a runoff, so you actually you guys actually had to go through a second round of what's going to happen.
Exactly. So we know it's coming to us. Literally, it's coming. It's on the way. It's just like, when is it coming? Yeah. So they're in the wake of MLK and all that he stood for, peaceful protesting and equitable rights for Black and people in general to just have an equal playing field. This was a slap in the face. What happened on last Wednesday was a slap in the face, and I hope 2020, 2021 that these people are held accountable for their action, and history doesn't repeat itself in terms of what happened with Germany, right?
Yeah. And from there, I want to talk about a term that you keep saying equitable, and I think, well, so okay, me and you went to college about the same time, so at the time, the term we would have heard mostly was equitable. And, very easy to understand. It's give everyone the same starting point as much as possible, and then see what happens from there. And I think equitable, I think this term started coming on in 2019, I believe. It's much more recent. And I think how I understand it, it's not to say that you have the same result, but for example, equitable,
Equitable.
equality is saying if Scotty had the chance to take the same test, like the SAT, take the same classes from his high school to get into Duke, did his classmates at Duke have the same thing? Did his classmates in high school who didn't get into Duke, did they have the same thing? Equality is saying let's try to make sure everyone gets the same resources in high school. Equity isn't saying everyone then gets into Duke. It's saying that everyone has the same opportunity to get into Duke. And then if Scotty has a better application and interviews well, he gets in. And if someone doesn't show up to their interview, or they blow off their application, or they just simply did not take advantage of the resources, it's not to say that they get into Duke, but then they have the same shot regardless of their race, gender, religion. Would you say that's how what equitable means? What equity means? Not we all get the same end result, but we all have the same opportunities for the end result.
Exactly. And if you take a little step further, it is saying that a person that went to an HBCU compared to a person that went to Ohio State, compared to a person that went to an Ivy League or Duke or Harvard, should have the same equal playing field for that job opportunity, right? And
Yeah.
there shouldn't be a racial gap in how the interviewing and hiring process is. There should be truly a quantifiable, equitable process of interviewing, and that those people are going to be looked at the same way, regardless of the institution that they have gone into. You see now with a lot of the HBCU, right? Our vice president went to Howard, right?
Wow.
So she can perform
Yeah.
just as better as anybody else, right?
Yeah.
That's it. It does not matter the classes that you take. If Scotty, if you study computer science in at Duke, right? That
Yeah.
those books that you read, they're probably the same. They have the same knowledge as the book that you were reading at Ohio State or at an HBCU.
And not just that, the same resources online. If I'm Googling Stack Overflow, the same YouTube videos, the same lectures on Khan Academy.
The difference is the opportunity and the network effect.
Mm-hmm.
You can tap into a network that is much more privileged, have a higher endowment, and more and these individuals that are graduating from Duke and other institutions are CEOs of those companies, and they can get you in, right?
Yeah.
That's where equitable comes into place, regardless, because we favor that person that went to Duke. Can we just say we're going to look at them as, okay, the interview, whoever has the best interview gets the job, not because they went to Duke or went elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's equitable, right?
Okay.
And so what you said was part of it, and the other step is it doesn't matter the institution I went to, because I favor a certain network. I am going to treat that person based on their performance of that interview process they went through.
Yeah. So basically saying let's try to create a much more equal meritocracy, because then if I show up to the interview, I deserve this more than the people who didn't show up. But then the people who interview better than me, regardless of their education, maybe they're better prepared because of their education. Maybe they went to a lesser school, but they've worked harder to prepare better than me. Well, then why not give them the shot? So
they went through the interview process. They performed better than you. They should get the job.
Yeah. And if it's not based on the interview, then make it clear, well, what is it based on? It's based on these things plus the interview. Okay, great. He interviewed better than Scotty, but Scotty performed better in these other metrics. And therefore, it's very clear why he got it. Not, wait, was that a backdoor? Okay. So, you mentioned HBCUs, which I was hoping to get to this, but you do have experience working directly with HBCUs, not just you have, an organization work with Black founders, but you're actually employed. Um, I guess
Yeah. So
you've
I'll
been
give you a
doing that for some
background.
time.
Yeah. So I had worked for Howard, right? I was
Yeah,
employed at Howard, and so the atmosphere is really lively. So that's I was one of the bigger HBCUs
yeah,
out there, and you will see they stand for excellence.
yeah,
The teachers, the students, they all come in and they put in the work. They stand for excellence, and when they come out, they should have the same opportunity to get to the best firms, regardless of the institution because when the issue, what part of the issue is when it comes to recruiting,
yeah,
recruiters of top companies, Deloitte and the likes, don't tend to go to an HBCU, right? That's a
mhm,
problem. For us, we get that. We get that privilege. You also get that privilege at Duke, right?
yeah,
We get recruited from the top companies.
yeah,
Goldman Sachs go to our campus at Ohio State, right? They go there. The Deloitte of the world, the Bain and Company of the world, right? They go there. They recruit us. Well, they should go to the same. They should go to those SPHs as well and give them those opportunities. And that's the difference.
mhm,
And that's what needs to change. Now, in terms of where I am, in Atlanta, is I work with as an op manager as well. I'm a founder, but I also work with other Black founders that are doing incredible things. So, as our RCIE, one of the good thing that they do is they provide access to amazing space, but as well as help those Black founders that need to get into retail stores like
yeah,
Target, the Walmart of the world.
yeah,
Those Black founders are in there, right? They're closing the racial gap and the health equity gap, right? That
yeah.
happens. So that's those are the things that I'm passionate about, making sure that we close those gap as I'm also building my own company.
Yeah. Okay, okay. And real quick, what does RCIE stand for?
So it's the Russell Center. So
Mhm.
Mr. Russell was was a one of the pioneer of entrepreneurship in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
He built so literally part of if you go into Atlanta airport, there there's different zone. I think B, right?
Yeah.
Atlanta Concourse B. So all the things that you'll see in Atlanta in that Concourse B, right? That stop because you usually go from A, B, C, D. But in B, most of those those things that you eat there, the
Yeah.
resources he owned those, right? That's all falling
Oh,
to the
wow.
Ross company. So he does construction. They build buildings, high scale buildings in Atlanta. So Mr. Russell actually, if the good story is Mr. Russell, MLK used to go to his house during a hard time. He would go to his house to swim in his pool.
Wow.
So Mr. Russell founded this company, RCIE.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he's all about Harmon Russell is the son now. He's 50 something years old. He runs Russell and Company now, but he's he's the chairman of the board for the nonprofit Russell, right? Which is a collaborative co-working space now. That's a beautiful space, but also have programming support for Black founders. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's your history about on MLK Day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really cool things is if I remember correctly, Atlanta is also the largest city with a Black majority, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we also know that in terms of the HBCU territory, going from Texas, Oklahoma out to North Carolina, Florida, and as far north as Baltimore, Atlanta, even though it's not the biggest city in this whole stretch, at least in terms of the HBCU community, and the African American population, Atlanta is kind of I don't know how to say it, but it is one of the most significant areas in this stretch of the country. not necessarily the biggest, but the cultural and historical impact it's had. And like you said, RCEI being right there, sorry, yeah. RCIE being right there. There is that symbolism, to say, the organization is going to try to identify and elevate, to achieve the equality and equity that a lot of founders struggle to find.
Absolutely.
Ever.
Yeah, and part of those resources there, like a safe space for them to come in, right? We do for them to come in to meet the influencers of the world. They have access to capital. They have access to decision makers in those big retail stores, for example.
Yeah.
We're giving that access, and it's very adjacent to Morehouse, right? Morehouse School.
Yeah.
So it's very strategically positioned. It's a pretty cool community. I go in there to work, and we support right now 100 Black founders.
Whoa, wow.
Yep.
And do they have to be in the Atlanta area, or can they be anywhere?
So they can be anywhere. Right now they're focusing more on Atlanta founders, but those founders can be anywhere.
Okay. And is there a certain age? Do you have to be 18 and up? Do you have to be in high school? Do you have to be out of college?
So there's like five stages in which the entrepreneur will go through. They go through, if you're the more of an idea phase, you just have an idea, you have a physical product. The programming support for that, right?
Yeah.
To get you from an idea to a product, and then now you have a product and you need more customers. There's programming supports for that as well. So this is, and then they have what I call the pace setters, right? The pace setters are the high performing Black founders, and those high performing Black founders have designated space as well in our RCIE, the collaborative co-working space, but they also have more opportunities in terms of getting connections to retail stores. So now you have a Black founder, they have a water, a really high quality pH level water. That water is in Walmart. They have a Black founder that have Symphony chips. That chip company is in Target, right? There's a founder that have a company called Try These Nuts. The founder's name is Louis Diz, right? And he's sweet creative nuts that are nicely packaged there. That itself, I think, is also in if you go to Walmart, you go to Target, and some of the big retail stores, they're there. So that's the gap that they're closing, resource gap.
Yeah.
Customer gap.
And like you said, a lot of this goes back to trying to create the equality and equity that is missing, and then kind of in the longer historical sense, also to say this is a major city, the largest in the U.S. with a majority Black population.
Yes.
A major city that was born out of the ashes of the Civil War, endured the war, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and all that. And it is, it's also kind of a, I guess a mecca of sorts for HBCUs, because you have schools like Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, some of these big names. And just kind of, I guess to be able to say, all right, here's a place, like you said, a safe space. It's not so much, hey, we're scared of people coming in. It's more, hey, here's a place where we can just be ourselves.
Yes.
Just like the Black patient coming in and saying, here's a Black doctor. I don't have to try to explain anything. It's just, yeah, this thing happened, and you get it. And RCIE is in a sense is saying something like that, but for founders. And if you're not in Atlanta, that's okay. But at least if you're here, we can connect you better. Regardless of your age, we'll put you through the 5 stages. And if you're already a little further ahead, okay, we'll put you in here. We'll start you here, maybe mentor people in this earlier stage, but then maybe here's people further down the line. They'll pull you along and help you figure out getting to the next step. So I guess, we've covered a lot. The first interview, you mentioned some stuff growing up in Sierra Leone, coming over, Ohio State, or the Ohio State University. I have to at least respect, your basketball program, gives us fits every now and then. So, I don't want to add fuel to the fire. And, this time we've talked a little bit more for you, what you've seen as someone who's lived in DC, someone who's lived in Atlanta, being in the HBCU space, and specifically with Howard, a school that often gets the same attention as Harvard, Duke, Stanford, MIT, but then also, this whole event, we're recognizing there's lots of HBCUs, 105 from what I can tell. Some sources say 107, some say 101. And part of the tragedy is some of these schools are falling apart because of the pandemic, because of being underfunded. So it's hard to get a good sense of what the exact number is. But, trying to say, how can we take advantage of the digitalization of everything going on to make sure everyone gets a shot at joining this event? And, from here, what are some other ways you can think of that, well, I guess for each individual to try to contribute to that true meritocratic society, but then also for us as a society to try to achieve that? What are some ways that individuals and society can try to move towards that?
I think for us, when you interact with somebody, always say that put yourself in that person's shoes.
Yeah.
It's the beginning point, rather than being judgmental and judging them because of their race, the way they speak, the way they're dressed. Put yourself in that person's shoes and just literally remove your bias lens.
Yeah.
If you try to do that, that's a very good beginning point that, hey, this is a human being, same life as me, probably have suffered through some of the same conditions as me, may have not have the same opportunity as me, but looking at it from that lens of I am going to put myself in that person's shoes, it helps remove the bias that we as human beings have. Even I have those biases, but that conscious decision to remove that bias by saying, how is that other person feeling?
Yeah.
Helps me to humanize my experience with them. I think that's one beginning point. The second point is being able to be a champion and an advocate as well, right? Things that you're doing here, I'm Scotty, that you're focusing on trying to do hackathon for HBCUs,
Yeah.
and given that opportunity, those are the steps that goes in the right direction, that pull in the right direction of closing that equitable and wealth gap.
And
So
I don't want to take too much credit, because part of me being able to do this is because before my family was even in the US, people like Dr. King, Malcolm X, they were already trying to not just push the narrative, but I guess really, really get America to pay attention and say, look, non-white people want just as much to enjoy America as you do and contribute. So give them a chance. And then a few decades later, I'm able to say, oh man, yeah, I don't have to worry about what fountain do I drink out of. I just worry about if I get on the bus or I don't. Let me try to help out and give back in some way, because I did get to go to Duke. A lot of kids don't.
Exactly. So MLK, Malcolm X, they all set the foundation for us to really now walk, right? And really, in the case of Ron, right, they had a dream. We have the opportunity to actually achieve this dream. As an entrepreneur, that's the realization that you can come from nowhere in this world, and come in the United States and have a chance at achieving a dream. Immigrants as well, right? They get a chance to achieve a dream if you work hard enough. And that's the part of being equitable, right? That, hey, your dream matters. If you're willing to work hard enough and make some sacrifices, resources are here to help you along that journey. And RCI is one resource. But remember, knowing history, MLK and Malcolm X and the likes of the world set that foundation for us to actually run and go achieve our dream and make an impact along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to close out by pointing out a couple other things. You've mentioned before that when you play soccer, football to the wider world, when you step onto the pitch, a lot of it really just comes down to your skills, your practice. Who are you on the pitch, not your color, this and that. And I think it's really interesting that we see, this past year with the NBA in the bubble, um, you know, people talking about Black Lives Matter in the not just the sports world, but also the entertainment world. We even see in law enforcement, for example. Yes, it was tragic that we saw a lot of white officers taking pictures and selfies with the insurrectionists, invaders. Honestly, there's so many synonyms. I'm not even sure which one is the proper one, but they broke in, they invaded, and we have pictures of these officers supporting these terrorists, these invaders. But then we also have pictures and videos showing white officers doing that. We also have a great video, 2.5 minutes long, of Sergeant Eugene Goodman baiting them away from the Senate, and it's one black man being chased by a mob, a white mob too. And we're seeing a lot of people in different fields that are, despite the bad apples, a lot of people are coming together to say, this is what we believe in. This is what some people believe in, but this is what we believe in. And like you said.
So, and Scott, to really close it for us, is the best thing that happened in 2020 was the pandemic, because we all sat home and saw the reality. Otherwise, no one would have really cared about Black Lives Matters or going out there and protesting. Even our allies of the world, that our white brothers that care about this matter and movements, and even our Asian brothers that care about this movement, right? They wouldn't have cared if they were going to the 9 to 5 and living their best life, right? But the pandemic, COVID is the best thing that's happened to Black Lives Matters and our movement, to get to equitable rights. And even in terms of the bubble, the reason why it was so effective is it was the bubble. Then there was no other thing that was a distraction. It was basketball, and then Black Lives Matter and the voting rights, right? Getting people behind. So the best, literally one of the best things that happened, which is an unfortunate thing. By no means, lots of people have died as a result of COVID, but it also speed up a lot of racial gap and racial disparity that happened, but it brought attention to issues that matter.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. We could talk forever about this, and especially I'd love to invite you back. So we shouldn't talk about everything right away, but I think what you said really drives it home, is that unfortunately it took something of this magnitude for us as Americans to finally start paying attention in a way that the Black community is saying, thank you, finally they're paying attention. But at the least, we are starting to see signs of everyone coming around saying, all right, we do need to finally address this properly. In fact, people are starting to, the lessons they stepped through in government in high school, they're finally starting to understand better how our civic system works, the impact of Jim Crow and all of that. And I think it's been great talking to you. Also this being the second time, obviously I want to have you back for a third, fourth, fifth time. But it's been great hearing the stuff that you're talking about with HBCUs, DC, Atlanta, RCIE, Black Founders, N of Cares. I guess let's kind of bring this back to you to close out. As a Black founder who is now in Atlanta with N of Cares, how would you like to impact others? And do you want to leave anyone with any last words?
So for us with Enough Cares, what we're really looking to do is really ensure that we take care of minorities that may have that racial gap in getting equitable care. That's important for us. So really closing some of those gaps. And for me, I have a personal story. So I have a heart for women, right? Women's health. Because my sister was impacted. She died due to nature, and my aunt died as well. So those are things that we're looking to close some of those racial health equitable gap that happens. So for 2020 for Enough Cares is really getting into ensuring that we have enough providers that we sell to, right? They buy our product to serve their patient panel. but as well as employers as well, right? So employers, so getting enough access to those employers. So that's what 2020 look for us. 2021 look for us. We get enough providers, enough employers to serve a greater population, and we can deliver better equitable care for our community. That is hopefully will be more higher, that will help close some of those gaps that happen in our community.
Yeah, yeah. And anyone is able to contact you at endofcares.com. We'll also leave contact information in the video description below. So anyone who wants to help out, support Mohamed, support End of Cares, anyone who's curious to find out more about RCIE, Howard, HBCUs, anyone who wants to say maybe if they want to work with you, definitely feel free to reach out. And I'm sure you'd also be glad to hear from someone who wants to play some football, the World Cup type.
Awesome.
And yeah. So thank you, Mohamed. It was great having you on. Like I said, I could talk to you forever, which we already do outside of these interviews. But in the interest of being able to invite you back in the future, don't want to spill too much of the stuff you do. So definitely we'll try to have you back again. But thank you for telling us all these things, for explaining some of the finer details about stuff that recently happened, stuff that we don't always fully understand, and sometimes it's just we just don't get it in the same way, and sometimes it's more we're just now starting to finally pay attention. So thank you for all of that.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Scotty. I look forward to the next one.
Definitely. Thank you. Happy MLK Day. Rest in peace, Dr. King.